talking with Aleric. He is pretty much the go-to when it comes to YouTube ads. We actually tag team a lot of projects together where Aleric will basically break their business because they got too many appointments from YouTube ads, and then they got to desperately get off of the phones, and then he'll kind of tag us in. So, and vice versa, we'll break their business where they got all these sales reps and now they want to push their calendar harder, and we'll tag Aleric in. So like, I know you're working with Jay and Samara, and they've been just like crushing it. So I'm excited to have you here. What's up, Ryan? Can you hear us? I see Ryan says, hey. So I guess everybody knows that YouTube is kind of the hot thing right now. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people are, sometimes you get into the Google Ads Manager and it's like a little daunting. Facebook is so familiar, and they don't know where to start or kind of how to leverage YouTube ads. So I guess the big question is, first of all, why YouTube ads? And I know that like you see some pretty interesting stuff with YouTube ads. So why YouTube ads in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously a lot of the people that we work with are similar to, the people who are in your group, right? You're selling like high ticket type of product, coaching, consulting, you have a program or service. And one of the big things that you see with that, right, is you're the face of that business, or you have somebody who's the face of that business. And because it's an expert-based business, you're oftentimes getting people who are looking up a solution, trying to find a solution. And we all know Facebook ads work, right? But the problem is they work to an extent. They get kind of go up and down. They're relying on an algorithm. As we know, there's a lot of competition. It's very much a red ocean. So not only is YouTube ads a blue ocean, there's less advertisers, less of us, kind of marketing consultants, coaches over there, but it's also the way the platform works. It's intent-based. So if somebody's looking up, how to get leads, how to get sales, how to get in shape, how to get fit, if they're looking up these different things that obviously have a high ticket offer for, how to find connections on LinkedIn, right? How to start selling your product, how to, whatever it happens to be, people are searching that on YouTube, and you can run your ad in front of those videos, educate them, get them excited and to see you as an expert, and then get them to take action off of that. It's very different than on Facebook. People are just kind of scrolling through. It's very much interruption based. Whereas on YouTube, not only is it intent based, where you're running in front of specific videos, in front of people who are actively looking right now for a solution, but you only pay on YouTube if somebody watches 30 seconds of your ad. Instead of paying for every impression that you get on Facebook, you only pay if they watch your ad for more than 30 seconds, and they can skip it after 5 seconds, so 5 to 29 seconds. So if they skip the ad, you don't pay anything. You only pay if they watch it for 30 seconds, which means they're interested. So they have intent, they're interested, they're likely to sign up, take that next step. And that's just the surface. And obviously we'll dive a little bit deeper. We have certain ways that we recommend doing it. I'm excited. I love dropping what I would call, value bombs, knowledge bombs, and I'm excited to dive into it.
Okay, so with YouTube ads, I guess like what does somebody need in place before they consider even running YouTube ads?
Yeah, that's a great question. So honestly, what I would say is you do want to make sure that you have a funnel in place and you have some type of offer that's first been proven, at least with a few sales that you've had on your own. But you don't need to wait until you set up Facebook to set up YouTube. You can start them. You can start them interchangeably. We've had people who really only did organic. Maybe they dabbled with Facebook, never really worked for them, and they see smashing success on YouTube because of the way the platform's set up. So I think a big misconception people has is you have to master Facebook to do YouTube. I mean, it's a very common misconception that people have about anything, right? That, if something that you're doing right now isn't working, that you're gonna try and master that first before doing something else. But in reality, that's a fallacy. You should really, maybe if this isn't working over here, go over and focus on what is working, what actually is gonna bring in those leads and sales.
So they need a funnel, they need a converting offer. What else would you say that someone really should at least have in place or consider having kind of put together before going live on YouTube ads?
Absolutely. So I do recommend some type of webinar, VSL training. Now, we do have some limited trainings on how some of this stuff works, but obviously our core expertise is YouTube ads, plugging that into, a business. And so really having that funnel that goes from your ad to your to some type of webinar, VSL, and then to an offer. Interestingly, what we've seen on YouTube ads, and a lot of people have been saying, with Facebook and everything, they're like, the webinars are dead, people aren't showing up to webinars anymore. But that's actually more on the platform as opposed to webinars themselves, right? And obviously there's a lot of people still doing very well with Facebook to webinar, but these days more and more, the show up rates are decreasing. I've seen people excite about 25%, which is pretty low, right? On YouTube, consistently between us and our clients, we're seeing between 50 and 60% show up rates. And on my webinar, it's an hour and 8-minute long webinar. Our average watch time is 53 minutes.
Wow.
We come in with the offer to book a call at 45 minutes. So it's crazy. And it's because, think about it, people are already on YouTube to learn. They're already on YouTube to watch a video. So if you can hit them with an ever webinar while they're in video consumption, learning mode, instead of just scrolling on their phone, like they're actually looking to learn, that's when you can get somebody who's much more likely to show up and then watch a whole webinar.
That makes sense. Okay. And it's interesting because, in our experience, YouTube ads, with Facebook ads, webinars don't work as well. Like, I just see it across the board with clients. For the most part, it's too long of a system. Drop-off rates are very high, especially when you're getting mobile distribution and then the people aren't showing up to it. But it makes perfect sense. Like, I know for me, when I'm on a Saturday night and I'm like binge YouTubing, it's like, and I'm studying either something or I'm like maybe getting my rap fix for the night. But I know, like, I'm there, and I'm usually, when I'm logged into YouTube, it's like a couple hours at a time or longer even sometimes. So that's really cool and interesting to know that webinars are still working. Do you see an optimal length in terms of video length of whatever that sales mechanism is?
Yeah. So if it's a webinar, typically you do want to keep the offer at least to that 45-minute mark. And that's kind of the classic. They'll tell you that on webinars, and then kind of like reiterate that after the fact. The only reason ours is an hour and 8 minutes is we have a 10-minute, we call it our testimonial supercut. We literally have a 10-minute long video of, like over 3 dozen of our clients just, talking, like doing a mashup of all of our testimonials. It's awesome. It's great for proof. If you have a lot of testimonials, you can put it together in one video. You can also run that on YouTube ads. We'll talk about that later. I'm getting ahead of myself, those retargeting. But that's what I would recommend. If it's a webinar, is I would go in with the offer around the 45-minute mark, and then obviously kind of keep stacking, like getting people to book a call or whatever, like reminding them for a few minutes there. And then if you have a super cut or you have some testimonials, just kind of playing that on the back end. But the bulk of the content should definitely be within the hour, or all the content. And then the 45-minute mark should be when you get people to book a call. In terms of a VSL, the optimal length that I've seen is honestly in that 15 to 25-minute mark. So I have a VSL as well. And it's interesting in that, even on YouTube, obviously lead cost is going to be lower for a VSL because it's, you're not selecting a time. There's not all these different things. But the application cost is much better on webinar across us and our clients with YouTube ads versus VSLs. So you can have people stay for that long webinar, and those people that stay are more likely to submit an app. But the VSLs also, obviously, if you're doing, kind of a Facebook, YouTube kind of play, you might want to have a VSL too. So VSLs typically 15 to 25 minutes. Those also work very, very well on YouTube too. I don't want that to be a misconception. It's just compared to each other, if you can get somebody to actually watch the whole thing, a webinar is almost always going to be better than a VSL if you can get them to watch the whole thing. That's just the trick, though. Can you get them to watch the whole thing?
Yeah. It's the old what's focal is causal, right? The longer they're paying attention to you, the higher the value is that is created. So if you can get them locked in, then yeah, you're going to do better, which makes perfect sense. Now, one thing I'd be curious about is, like, what do you see in terms of costs as they relate to Facebook, right? So I know most people that we're working with are spending on Facebook. Yeah. So what do you see the patterns are of, say, cost per lead, cost per application, and cost per acquisition from YouTube to Facebook? Yeah, absolutely. So typically what we're seeing is the cost per application is much lower on YouTube compared to Facebook. The lead cost, it does depend. Sometimes the lead cost is around the same, but the quality is not as similar as Facebook. Facebook gets, a lot of, looky-loo kind of people just kind of like, oh, that's interesting, I'll sign up. So you do tend to have
lower lead costs if you like at scale. But on YouTube, you have the people that are going in that, remember, they've watched a 30-second video, or at least 30 seconds. It's a longer video. We'll talk about that. Like usually we'll do 3 to 5 minutes, but they've watched at least 30 seconds. They're in the intent mode. They're watching videos. They're trying to learn. They sign up. They're going to show up at a much higher rate. And so what we've seen is the cost per webinar view, or the cost per, if you're tracking people who get to, let's say, the booking page, right? If you're on a VSL, that's going to be lower on YouTube, and same with the application cost. So I'll give one example. We have Lucy, who kind of is in the consulting kind of coaching space, and she was over on, and she's in England, so it's based on pounds, right? But over there, she was around the 140, 150 pound cost per Facebook application. Her applications on YouTube were less than 60 pounds. And
That's
so,
crazy.
yeah, it's insane. And get this, her sales team was fighting, and this is in her testimonial. This is part of her mashup too. Her sales team was fighting over the YouTube leads because they were higher quality.
Yeah, and I know they're putting up crazy numbers. So we put Jay over there. I don't know if you know Jay. He's one of the guys on their sales team. But, I mean, dude was doing like 25, 30 grand a month in commissions. So he's putting up like 250 grand a month as a sales rep more. So definitely things were rocking on that.
It's awesome. That's like, here's another example, right, of tag teaming. It's literally one of those things where we legitimately have people have the problem where they have so many leads that they need salespeople, that they need people to go through and crank that up. And honestly, I had that same problem as well. And I'm sure we'll get to that as well, and using you to find, you know, the best salespeople, because that's what it's all about. You want to make sure you have the back end to cover the leads coming in, because you get to a point where like, oh my God, there's so many applications. I mean, we had, you know, another example is like Ahmad. He had the exact same problem. So it's crazy.
That's exactly who I was thinking about, actually, when you said that.
Exactly. The video, he's like, he made a most hilarious video too, where he's like, warning folks, you know, don't work with Aleric if you want any free time. Like, your calendar's gonna be, and obviously it was kind of funny, right? Tongue in cheek, because he's like, you know, we have all these people come in. I don't have any time anymore. If that sounds like a good value proposition, then go sign up with him. But it was kind of funny. Obviously, you know, helping get him some sales and people and all that stuff. So,
yeah, when he talked to me at first, he was like, dude, I can't handle this, man. I'm dying over here. Like, I need someone right away. And the other interesting thing about his offer, so like, just for anyone watching, so you have a little bit of context, Ahmad works with kind of more higher end, like real consultants, right? Like I say that, real consultants, but like people who are in the corporate world. So it's not as much like in our realm of kind of like packaged coaching offers and whatnot that we are accustomed to, but more like big, you're going on site, you're working with teams of 100 plus and kind of enterprise level consultants a lot of the time. And he helps them attract and get more clients. And the interesting thing was that he couldn't get Facebook to work to save his life.
Yep.
And it was super frustrating. He couldn't scale. And then he actually went to you. And then it was like overnight, he was like, dude, this thing's just rocking. And it like really cranked up on him.
Yeah. So, from that 50, 60K mark to 100K, consistently 100K from the YouTube ads. And then the bottleneck though, once you get to that 100K, and by the way, that's pretty far to go selling yourself. Up to 100. I did that as well. I built up to the 100K, and then I was like, all right, I need salespeople to scale this beyond that point. But that's like you can have, like, I would actually say you probably want salespeople before that, because that's like crazy. You're like grinding it out, but you need it. If you get to that point, you absolutely need it, because you can't do that volume, and you can't scale beyond that as an owner.
Yeah, and I think that as an owner, you start to, like, as you push that much volume, start to see places where you want to fix your product, and then you don't even have the time to fix your product. So it's like that is a really difficult feeling sometimes while you're there. So one thing, I just kind of want to like see this, and I think this would be a good thing for anybody watching. So with YouTube ads, right? So we run YouTube ads, just light traffic, not like much cold traffic acquisition. And for me, one of my concerns is, and I'm sure like anybody watching this is going to have some level of the same concerns, but it's just that the ad inventory seems really low for the problem that we solve. And so my question is like, can I really scale cold traffic YouTube ads to the level that, like, I've seen a pretty low ceiling on Facebook ads. And so I'm wondering, could I scale, how far could I actually scale YouTube ads?
I love that question, because that question answers what a lot of people who are watching this might be thinking about. And I think I know some guys on my team who can talk with you about that, that you might have brought in. But in all seriousness, that's legitimately what our difference, is with our YouTube ads program, because there's a huge misconception out there. We'll bust two of them. One is with the ad itself. We'll actually do it in reverse than I usually do, when I hop on, interviews or things like this. We'll start with the targeting, because that's what you're asking about, right? The biggest mistake that people make is they follow, what everybody who's just kind of learned about YouTube ads is teaching, which is the placements methodology, right? Now, don't get me wrong. This does work at a small scale, and it is low-hanging fruit, and this is delicious low-hanging fruit, but it's not scalable to only select individual videos, even channels, but especially individual videos that you want to run your ads in front of. Because the problem there is, you have to constantly swap out videos. You're never going to be able to have enough videos in one campaign to really get scalability. And so what happens, and what you're talking about, is running placement ads where you're selecting the specific videos that are only the very, very specific ones that people are watching, that are looking up, how to grow a sales team or whatever it happens to be. The people watching that, really low hanging fruit. So it's a good idea in the early stages to run something like that. But when you're looking to scale, that's, honestly, and obviously what we recommend is starting off, with something like us, because we're going to set it up from day one for that scalability. But the way that we set it up is in a process called 3D YouTube ads targeting, where we actually have a 3-dimensional approach. So one of the biggest things people do when they start advertising on YouTube is it's 2-dimensional, right? They just do placements and demographics. We call Facebook ads 2-dimensionals as well, because it's demographics and interests, right? There's no intent on Facebook. Over here, people are doing demographics and they're doing intent, but there's nothing about who that person is. So people, when they try to scale up on YouTube, they'll go into keywords and topics. And you might have even done some of this. The problem when you go into just keywords and topics is it's too broad. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting, you're using like, sales team, you're using some of these keywords that are pretty broad, and you're attracting all kinds of people, corporate people, whatever it happens to be. And that's probably what you experience. So then you're like, oh no, I got to go back to the safety of placements. But there is a way to take that broader keywords, topics. These are collections of videos instead of just choosing one or two, specific videos or a few specific videos. You're choosing these keywords, these collections, and layering it with affinity, URL, and intent audiences. So YouTube has audiences that you can layer, and that's the third dimension that a lot of people don't even know that you could do on YouTube. So imagine this, right? Now you're taking some of these a little bit broader keywords, topics, right? Instead of placements, you're taking these keywords and topics. So they could be topics about sales, sales management, sales teams. They could be keywords that are, sales teams, how to find salespeople, things like that. If you just ran those on their own, you might get some big like corporations, maybe not the type of people that you're looking for. But then you layer that with audiences, and there's some incredible things you can do with audiences. For instance, you can set up specific affinities where you just put in keywords that Google knows about a person. That's a very basic one. So you could actually put in ClickFunnels. You could put in, entrepreneurs, kind of. That's a little bit too broad, to be completely honest. But there's that type of thing. But you can get more granular. You can actually put in what's called URL affinity targeting, where you could put in ClickFunnels.com. So now these are people that have either been to ClickFunnels.com or a similar site. Right, so there are some similar sites built in there, but ClickFunnels.com, maybe Kartra, Lead Pages. So they're in the online kind of marketing space. They're in the ClickFunnels space. And now they're looking up sales team, how to find a salesperson. And you target people who are in the top 20 or 30% of household income earners. You used to be able to do that on Facebook. You can't anymore. It's all zip code. You could do actual income targeting on YouTube, top 20%. So now you've got somebody in the top 20%, they're looking up how to grow a sales team, how to find a salesperson, and they're in the ClickFunnels ecosystem because they've been on that or similar sites, maybe expertsecrets.com, whatever it is. That's how you pinpoint the perfect high ticket buyer. And that's how you scale, because there's some extra scalability over here with the people looking up those broader keywords. There's extra scalability over here with people involved in ClickFunnels, where you're getting the cross section of those layered. That's more scalable than if you just pinpoint only a few specific videos.
So help me understand something, because something's not quite making sense to me.
Yeah.
How is the cross section more scalable, right? Wouldn't it be, if they have this and they have that, wouldn't that be a smaller subset than the actual kind of like either or situation?
So that's a great question. So we're actually not, and I love that you're asking this too, because this could be what people are listening, are thinking. So this is different than placement ads. Placement ads are where you say this one video, this second video, let's say you have 10 videos, 10 different videos you're going to run your ad in front of. That's where a lot of people start, because quite frankly, that's where a lot of, low end courses, kind of online free content, they all point people towards placements. Select these certain videos. That's all you're running in front of. What you have to do to scale is you have to get into what are called more keyword targeting. So it's based on what people searched on YouTube or the tags that a video has, or like the title of a video. And that's a lot broader, because instead of these 10 videos, maybe specifically on how to get a sales team, you get things that are maybe a little more broad. So they might be more about like, sales, but you're layering it with people in ClickFunnels who are in a higher income bracket, so you're reaching the right person. So essentially, you're targeting a collection of videos with a keyword or with a topic. Like one of the topics could be sales. If you just ran that on its own, that's going to be way too broad, right?
Yeah.
But if you layer that with people who are in ClickFunnels and they're in a higher income bracket, so they're a business owner, right, decision maker, you combine those three together, that's how you pinpoint the right person. I'll explain an example for me. So for me, I do have like some very small placement campaigns that aren't really scalable, getting in front of videos on how to set up YouTube ads. But there's not that many videos on that on YouTube, right? There's like a dozen of them, and maybe a couple of them are mine. It's kind of funny, right? So there's a bunch, these different videos. But what we found success at with us, and this is the same method we apply to other people, but this will be an easy way to look at it, is we'll take top 20% of income earners. So we know they're like a business owner of some kind. Their business is, at least doing well enough that they can invest in something like this. And then we layer that with people looking up how to run Facebook ads, how to run ads, online advertising. There's even a topic for advertising and marketing. Now, if I ran those on their own, it's too broad, right? We wouldn't get as many leads as we want. We'd be able to scale it however much we want, but we wouldn't get as many leads. But what we're doing is we're layering that with people who have been to clickfunnels.com before, with people who have an affinity towards YouTube ads, or maybe they've done what's called a custom intent. So they've searched recently on how to use YouTube ads, how to use Facebook ads, whatever it is. So we're layering that, so maybe the easiest way to think about it is somebody in the ClickFunnels ecosystem, they're looking up Facebook ads and they're a top income earner. That's perfect. That's exactly who we can serve. So we've created essentially a triangle, and we're finding that person in the middle. But because the triangle is built up of three pieces that are broader, right? All the people in the top 20%, all the people who are into ClickFunnels, all the people who are looking up how to run ads. We can scale that much more efficiently than just the few videos that talk about YouTube ads specifically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. I think that is awesome. And I think a lot of the people here may have had that same kind of question or concern.
Yeah.
And, like, to hit that, I guess from there, the other question I have is like, what are some of the other big misconceptions or like concerns that you typically see people have when it comes to starting with YouTube ads that just, like what you showed there, it's like, well, that's not really the case. So like, what are some of those big myths or misconceptions?
Yeah. That is a great question. Honestly, one of the other really big ones is that people think you need to have this big, overly produced, advertisement in order to get, get traction on YouTube. And honestly, that's the opposite of what you want to do, especially for all of us. We're coaches, consultants, we're experts, we're course creators, right? We want to resonate and connect with people face to face And if you just feel like a big Hollywood ad, you've got a big green screen studio set up, spokespeople, all this other stuff. The problem is it's really hard to nail that, right? So it ends up being a little bit hokey if you don't. And when you do nail it, you're just creating the type of ad that everybody tunes out. Think about it. If you're watching, TV, sports, or whatever it is, right? You go into the other room when a commercial starts playing, right? Because you've been attuned your whole life to tune out these overly produced commercials. But if somebody is on YouTube and they're looking up how to get leads, how to get sales, or in your case, right, how to grow my sales team, or they're just looking up, how to improve sales because they're a business owner, the top 20%, they're in ClickFunnels, they might not even know that they need a sales team yet. That's why if you're only running placements in front of a sales team, that's not going to be as scalable. You could just run videos with the sales, ClickFunnels, and top income bracket and tell them that they have this problem, or show them that they have this problem, that they need a sales team. Because if I had, learned that earlier on, I probably would have gotten a sales team before I, grinded myself to 100K just all on my own, so things like that, right? And so essentially, if you're reaching those people and you don't want to reach them with an overly produced ad, you want to connect yourself, kind of like how we are right now. We're just talking and people really resonate with this because, we're having a conversation. We're talking about real things that's going to help people. You feel natural. So all you really need is a gimbal like this, right? This is and you would put it up like that. So this is a gimbal that will stabilize your phone, a little microphone, which I don't actually have handy with me right now, but a little microphone that you can attach, to your iPhone to get a little bit better audio. And so that stabilizes your phone. You've got a little bit better audio and you can record an ad literally today, right? Once you create a script, we'll talk about how to, the winning components of a script and all that stuff. But you could create an ad that you could run and literally make millions of dollars off of with just an iPhone and a gimbal. And we've had multiple clients do that. So that's all you need. That's a huge misconception when it comes to the advertising is that you need this big overly produced. People trust natural. They trust you as an expert getting on screen, talking to them. And it's the type of content that's already on YouTube.
Interesting. That's cool. Yeah. And like, I see that too, right? Like, the ads that are the ones that I actually am like, oh man, let me sit and like actually watch this thing. It's when it's like so conversational and it's just, they entered the conversation in my mind right then and there. And it wasn't like, they spared me the rags to riches story. They spared me the, like all the flashy, like, here's my Lambo and here's this thing. And it was just like, like, yeah, do you want this and that? Well, here, let me take you into my computer real quick. And then they show you it and you're like, oh man, I like sit and just go right through the ad. Yeah. So you seeded it. And I think that's like the perfect segue to get into it is what are the winning components of the script and what are the sorts of things that someone needs to have in place before hitting record and then actually getting that YouTube ad going?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is really, really essential. I'm going to dive into all three key components of that winning ad. So this is where I got to be careful with what I say about being natural. Being natural doesn't mean you go in with no plan, you just hit record and you just kind of go all over the place, right? Being natural means you can use a gimbal, you could use your iPhone, you don't need a big production studio, you don't need to overthink it. But when it comes to your script, you do want to make sure that you have something that resonates with your market, with your audience. And so there's three key components. There's a hook, educate, and call to action. Let's talk about what not to do. What not to do is what I've seen a lot of people, and this is also the issue that you run into, right? Because obviously we'll talk about like our process is more of a program. It's done with you. So we're helping people hands-on, go through this, setting up, campaigns together, training. But we also have copywriters that help our clients write the scripts. One of the biggest problems I've seen out there, with agencies that are like, well, we do all kinds of ads. Maybe we'll help you with YouTube too. They don't really know that much. They're just oftentimes just doing placements. But nobody talks about what goes into a winning ad, right? And that is so essential. The creative is so important. And so the big mistake people make is they'll create these 30 or 60-second ads because they've either seen it before, they've seen like, these big campaigns like Geico, Ford, or whatever, or, on Facebook, a 60-second ad because you also have text might work. What we recommend is a 3 to 5 minute long ad that actually shows you as the expert, actually gives value and information that gets people not only, wanting to sign up for the webinar, but making them need to sign up for the webinar or VSL or whatever. It doesn't have to just be a webinar. If you already have a VSL, you can take a high performing VSL and transfer it over to YouTube. And we've got clients doing incredibly well at VSL. So I just want to loop back on that earlier. But so the way that this works is you have a hook, right? So you're capturing people's attention, you're pulling them in, but you also want to push people who are a bad fit away at the same time. So you want to pull somebody in who's a good fit, but push somebody away who's a bad fit. And the reason for that is you want people to skip your ad in the first 5 to 29 seconds if they're not interested, because that's another way that you don't have to pay for them if they skip your ad, right? And so obviously the targeting, we want that to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but anybody that accidentally falls into that, because we are a little bit broader on our couple things, and the layering, it works out really well, but there's always gonna be a few people who get in who aren't interested or aren't interested right now. You wanna get those people to skip, so you're only paying for the people genuinely interested. Pulling in the right person, pushing away. I'll give a couple examples of a couple of hooks that we've done. Obviously, we've got clients that do all kinds of different hooks, different niches, and different areas. But one hook that worked really well for us and still works really well, but there's another one that's working even better, and I'll give that in a second, is the following. What if you could ethically hijack your competitor's traffic and send it directly into your own funnel? Well, in this video, we'll show you how you can do just that using targeted YouTube video ads. Let's hop over to my screen, kind of like what you were saying before, and then I go into the screen and I teach them. We'll talk about the educate section. And the reason that works really well is a few reasons. It captures people's interest. They're like, wait a second, what can you do with this, right? It also pushes away people who don't know the jargon, right? Funnels, hijack, ethically hijack, competitors' traffic, like using all of these different words, people who aren't in the online marketing, coach, ClickFunnels ecosystem, they're going to skip the ad. They're going to be like, this guy's talking like alien language. We don't, they don't even know what it is. And so that's pulling in people by using that industry, language that they understand, pushing away people who don't understand it, and intriguing them enough to watch. The other one, and this is the one that's working the best for us right now, is really, really simple, but it's an us versus them. It's a provocative statement that people have to watch to see what I'm going to say. And I just come out and I say, YouTube ads beat Facebook ads every time. And in this video, I'm going to show you why. Let's hop over to my computer screen, right? It's a bold statement. People may agree or disagree in the moment, but you can't argue with the fact that agree or disagree, you're going to keep watching, and you're going to, you're going to be interested in what the argument is to back that up. And so that's the type of thing. That's a couple examples of some hooks. So you could do kind of these bold statements. You could do other things. We recommend split testing like 4 or 5 different hooks. When we have clients come in, our copywriter kind of helps them map out like different hooks to use. But once you have the hook, now you've captured people. The big mistake people make, like I said before, is they'll do short ads. They'll just hook. And then they'll, instead of saying, let me show you, they'll say, okay, go sign up for my webinar and we'll teach you. But there's no substance, right? You're not actually giving people a reason to show up. So your show up rates are going to be bad if you don't give a little bit of education, right? What you want to do is provide value in the ad. And this is one of the best parts of YouTube, because after 30 seconds, you've paid the same amount for a view, however long it is, right? So if you can provide value and capture people's attention, really like educate them and get them to see you as the expert, they're much more likely to show up on the webinar. So what we like to do is give you 2 or 3 golden nuggets on your ad. So one of them that I do is I let people know that you only pay with the YouTube ad if somebody watches more than 30 seconds, right? A lot of people don't know that. So it's a golden nugget. People find that really valuable. I also show some of the basics of targeting a YouTube ad. It's actually kind of funny. I actually show some of the basics of what we just talked about. Isn't the method for scaling, it's placement ads, but it's the easiest to demonstrate, right? To get people into the rest of my funnel. And then in my webinar, I start talking about 3D YouTube ads, how to scale, things like that. And so I give this demo, I give this information. Now people want to learn more. They need to learn more. They want to take that next step and sign up for the webinar. And then you have the call to action. That's what gets them off of the video into the funnel. You got to make it stupid simple. Go here, click this button, register for the webinar, and we'll show you exactly how this works.
Love it. Okay, so I want to transition, but before we transition, so for here, I want to get into kind of like your actual journey as a business owner, more so in going to 7 figures and well on your way to 8 figures. But before we get into that, there's just a couple questions around YouTube ads and everything we've covered so far. So one of the big things that Joe Jagletti asks is, what's the typical number of paid ad views required to get a click to the landing page? So effectively, what's the CTR that you would have as a KPI?
Yeah, so obviously it's gonna vary, and typically, honestly, we look more at conversion rates and leads and conversions. So what we're typically looking at is a click-through rate. The click-through rate's more based off of the way it's set up in there in Google, because Google's based off everything is more based off of an impression, which you don't actually pay for. You pay for the views. So typically, in impression click-through rates, we're looking to get 1.5 to like 3%. Sometimes it can be higher than that. Sometimes it's lower, and you can have the metrics work out on the leads as well. That's off of impressions. Doing the mental math, that's going to be higher per view. Honestly, that's going to be more like 5 to 10, or like it's going to be higher per view. Views are more than 30 seconds. So if you can get like, let's say you have like 100 impressions, right? Which is people that see your ad. You might have 10 people that view it. And then you might want to have from that, you might have like 1 or 2 people that will click on it, or 1 to 3 people maybe. So that overall, that's like a 1 to 3% click-through rate from the impression, but you're actually paying only for the views. And so that's where it can get a little tricky with that. Sorry for the complex answer. I'm kind of analytical like that, so I'll give you the more analytical answer there. But I like to look more so at the lead metrics than the click-through rates. But typically on the click-through rate it gives you, you'd want to look for between, like 2 to 3%, that's the best, but over 1%, absolutely, because if it's less than that, then you're going to need to change the creative, things like that.
Cool. And I know Joe's definitely not mad at you for getting analytical. He loves the numbers. So
absolutely.
All right. And then another quick question that someone had was, Ryan asked, I have 2 AdWords accounts, both not spending anything despite everything set up correctly. Have you dealt with this issue?
So it depends on how it is set up. There's a couple of things, and I'd have to, to really know the exact, as with any troubleshooting, right? You kind of have to see, exactly what's going on. But honestly, it's probably not it's definitely not something that can't be solved and troubleshooted. There's a couple of key things that I would do is, if you're setting up a TCPA campaign, I would try and switch it to max conversions. And regardless, if it's not TCPA or max conversions, I would also run a CPV, cost per view. It's a manual bid ad to get some conversions into the campaign, to train the Google tag for what a conversion is, and then run the lead ad. So one big problem some people have, and we have a lot of our clients that will start with lead ads and CPV ads. The CPV ads will usually turn off. They do not perform as well as the lead ads, but you need to have sometimes those ads running simultaneously to get conversions, so that the lead ads know what's going to work best for a conversion. Not all the time,
makes sense.
But that's something to troubleshoot in that case.
Yeah, and for people who are familiar running Facebook ads, it's effectively you start with like a traffic objective to then figure out what the conversion objective is, and then moving into that. Yeah, makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And then they said, do you see higher consumption rate of Lee? We chatted about that, I think, but maybe we could touch on it real fast. Higher consumption rate of VSL or webinar on YouTube versus Facebook ads. And then have you tracked the difference on this before?
100%. It's a lot easier to track the consumption rate on webinar, as you know, because every webinar just gives you all the stats. And yes, you can track the VSL, but not all of our clients have easy ways to Wistia or whatever to kind of track that. The consumption rates, though, you can see just by the number of people on a VSL that actually book a call. Like Ahmad's a great example, right? Not as many people booking a call. He was running a VSL on the VSL for Facebook versus YouTube, going very well. But in terms of webinar, we actually do have the hard numbers. I have heard from a lot of people that are in that 25, 30% on Facebook show up rate. Our average across us and our clients, last time that we surveyed it, is between 50 and 60%. Ours is around that 60% mark, and in like it was 58% at one point, kind of fluctuates around that 55 to 60% show up rate on our webinar. And our average webinar consumption time on an hour and 8-minute webinar is 53 minutes, where we have the offer to book a call at 45 minutes. And that's from these YouTube ads.
Yeah, that's just nuts. So now transitioning from here into the actual process of scaling your business. I know like you've been going at this, and especially in the past year, you've hit some quantum leaps.
Yeah.
So describe, at least in the past year, sort of some of those sticking points and then the shifts and the quantum leaps that occurred.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, it was basically about it was a year ago that I had hit, or a year and a little bit ago, so a year and like a month ago. Last May was my first 100K month, last year, and I ramped up to that all on my being my own like advisor, and we were running ads. And the thing was too, I was like these, because obviously I'm the ads guy. I'm like, I could scale these ads up a ton. And so obviously I needed the salespeople. I'm sure we'll get into that. But, honestly, the big thing initially for me, the marketing is always, and I think I've actually seen like business owners, there's three main things. Now, typically, it's not like the client success side, although I have seen a few, but typically though, so those are like the three main things: is client success, marketing, and sales. Typically, it's not client success. Usually, you know what you're doing. You're an expert. You've got all that locked in. Sometimes you have to build out operations or systems, but it's either the marketing or the sales. And that's why we were talking, when we tag team clients, they just blow up, because if you get the marketing dialed in and the sales dialed in. So for me, it was initially perfecting my sales, but by this point, exactly 1 year ago, I had done that. I had gotten up to a 40% close rate on my calls. We were basically taking like a lot. I was taking a lot of calls, and getting people to come in. And actually, by that point, a little bit less. We were more specific on the people I would talk to. The big thing that shifted from there was bringing on that first salesperson. And I brought on, and we were in talks, but I also had in my network was the first person that I brought on, and David, and it was incredible. And I saw us go from that 100K to then 150, 180, 200. And that was insane. But then I was still taking a bunch of calls. He was now taking a bunch of calls, but I was still on the phone. And so I remember at the exact same time, I actually flew out to, and I might be getting the timeline a little bit off, but within a 1 month period, I flew out to Paris, and there was an event with Jay Abraham, and he told me, because I had a hot seat, with him in front of the room and everything like that. And he was telling me in a much more eloquent way than I'm going to say now, by the way. So it's not exact quote, but he was basically telling me that, I need to trust my team and my process and become the CEO and trust my team to do the sales, and that I should bring on more salespeople and I should increase my ad spend, because I was like, well, I'm getting a 10x, ROAS on my YouTube ads. And actually, it might have been 12 when I was talking to, like, I'm like the ROAS, like, it's so insane. And but that's also contingent on me closing 40%. My sales guy is closing less than that. But really, if you look at it, if you want to grow and to scale, both on the closing percentage, and then we also say the exact same thing on the marketing side, your return on ad spend, right? As you scale up, as you bring on more salespeople, right, you're going to be able to hit higher highs and overall bigger profit margin, profit numbers as well. Maybe not margin, but profit numbers as well. But based on building up your systems, scaling your ads, so that maybe the ROAS is not as high, but you're making more revenue and more profit. And same thing with your sales team. You're not spending your time on every single call. And so that's when we got in touch, and we brought on, shortly thereafter, brought on Joseph, and I think we trialed somebody else as well. And then
even before that, I don't know if you remember, but David was only doing sets for you.
Oh yes,
he wasn't doing any closing, and then that was kind of like you were like white knuckled, hanging on to the reins still. And then we started off different than most people would start off working with us, but we started off on more training side of things to get David to shift into the closer role.
Yes, that's why I was trying to put the piece together, because I know we brought on, and it was December that we brought on Joseph. I'm like, wait, what was going on? Yes, that obviously, and sorry, just kind of tip of the mind there, but absolutely. So that was incredible, because what we were able to do is increase David's closing rate, replace me on the calls, pull myself off. I could then focus on expanding, what we were doing, not only for our marketing and to scale our business, but also to grow our team and help our clients more and build out more client success. I built out new modules. I built out a whole like retargeting machine 2.0. There's so much things that I could do to improve the customer and client experience that I couldn't do before when I was on calls like literally all day.
Yep.
Yeah, that was incredible. And if you want, I could kind of pick up.
Yeah. I think some of the interesting things that occurred, at least, and I'd love to hear your take on it, but I know for a little bit, like the process of getting David into pocket was like very nerve wracking for you. Especially in those first few weeks where you'd be like hitting me up like, yo, what's going on? When's this going to click? When's this going to click? And it was like a few talk you off the ledge kind of moments. So I'm just be curious to hear kind of your experience through that. Cause that was I think it was a big moment for you. And then you got the trust with David. You had to kind of almost do that, relearn it with Joseph. And then now I've totally seen like you've shifted as a leader and how you like trust the team.
Yeah. And I think that's really the big thing is, becoming this whole past year, right, has been becoming a CEO. It's been about becoming a CEO and trusting the team, trusting the process, actually having, not micromanaging everything, right? And I think there's a lot of positives to wanting to, perfect things and really caring about, everything being well-oiled, like detail-oriented. But the opposite side is you do have to take a step back and let your team, do things and succeed and go through the process. And, I knew that it was going to be what I needed, but obviously in the moment, it was definitely scary, right? The different, especially when the closing rate's a lot lower than what and all of that. But that process and the way that you were able to walk me through it was incredible. And that's, obviously a testament to yourself and your team, Mike. But, it was just great to be able to have somebody in place. And I think that's the feeling, I think, on the other side, and you get both, right? That's the feeling that people have when they can get their marketing in place and their marketing dialed in, right? Because maybe people are running these placement ads or they're running Facebook ads, but the issue with Facebook is scalability or the results going all over the place.
Bans,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. All of these issues. But then when you get onto YouTube and then you scale up and you get these campaigns that are scalable and long-term, that's where, there's this exciting degree. And so obviously, yes, there's a little bit of testing at the beginning. We have a lot of clients who get sales even, during that testing period. That's what we strive to have happen, right? It's the same thing with as you're testing a new closer. But once that's dialed in, once a closer's dialed in, once, your marketing is dialed in, that's when you have a machine working. And that's when business really gets fun and there becomes so much, limitless possibilities.
Yeah. So I remember there was something that's interesting, and I'm sure like you have the same experience with your clients, which was, it's the way I described it. I think we actually mentioned this on another interview we did, but it's a lot like a circuit, right? And you have a circuit, but there's a lot of openings in the circuit. And so you got to close that one part, and then you got to get to the next part and then close that part of the circuit. And then you got to get there and close. And then it's like almost only once the circuit closes, the lights come on. Right. And I remember with David, there was like, you'd hit me up. You'd be like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And I'd be like, hey, here's what we're working on. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to go. And I remember telling you up front, like, it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks before you see the shift. And you're like, in those 3 to 4 weeks, you're like, oh my God, like super antsy. And it'd be like, hey, this is what we're working on this week. Here's what we're going to focus on. And then again, it was like almost like bang on. That third week was when he just like, boom, turned into an animal. And then he just went like crazy since. So, and I imagine though, it's the same thing, right? You're testing your ads, you're testing your ads, you're testing your ads. They're sitting there seeing the money going out. They're kind of white knuckling, trying to hang on to the reins still. But then it's like, once it clicks on the ad side, it's just like, you see that wall of appointments, like what Ahmad had. And then it's like, okay, we got a whole different set of problems now.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And then you have new problems because obviously, once we had, David dialed in and just crushing it and going so well, I remember we had a conversation too, where I was like, all right, we're getting into the holiday season. We're going to look for that second advisor in January. Like, no way, we're doing this now so that we can hit the ground running. And that's exactly what I would tell somebody too with YouTube ads. And, I think you even, brought that up as well. It's like, get this dialed in now and then hit the ground running. And that was just incredible because we found, Joseph that way, who's been, obviously incredible and really, a big part of the team. And we've been growing it ever since. And now we're at, 4 one's in training now. And another one that you guys brought over. We got 3 main advisors. We got 1 in training. So 4 advisors currently running. We got 4 specialists, 3 of them kind of our main specialists, 1 training. And it's just incredible, the ability to continue to scale. And I might be getting ahead of, where you want me to go next, but it's just great.
Yeah. And I noticed a distinct difference once Joseph got in. You kind of like got it where you're like, okay, I kind of can see this thing. And there's still the occasional like, holy crap, this, and like you're seeing it at scale. It's so emotional, right? Like you'll have these 2 weeks where you're like, where's the deals? Where's the deals? Where's the deals? And then it's like that next week, it's like, here's the deals. And it's like almost like a whole month happens in a week, and then starting to get accustomed to that pattern and that flow.
Exactly. And I think though we've been talking about a lot of the similarities between marketing and sales. There are big differences as well. And I think that's also where we were actually joking, somebody else in the chat, who also agree with being analytical, right? So somebody who's a little more like, I want to look at the exact numbers. There's a human element to sales. So with numbers and with marketing, you can go in, and we didn't even talk about this as much, but you can go in and specifically see this keyword, this particular video you're running an ad in front of. This caused a conversion, this one didn't. It's black and white. You can turn off, not really always, but even sometimes there's gray. Some are like, okay, is this one good enough? Where is it? But like basically you can see the data and make an educated decision and turn off what's not working. And typically the results, because this is like leads and applications, maybe the applications are a little more clumpy, but in general, they're like every day. But then at least the leads, you can see, okay, everything's tracking well. You have all the metrics. With sales, I think, it's different because it has that human element. And I think it's really good, obviously, the way that you guys help kind of bridge that gap. Because I'm sure somebody coming from the human element of sales, there's things you could do to like encourage a sales team to close deals. Whereas, with your marketing, you can't just like be like, okay, or whatever, like what's going on? How can we, so the marketing, it's more consistent for better or worse. And with the sales, it's more human element. But I think the mesh of the two, obviously, that's what really builds the business. So.
Yep. Marketing sales alignment. It's crazy. And then
exactly.
The thing though that you're talking about, I think that like a big difference between the marketing and sales, and we've like had a lot of conversations about this, is the cycle time, which you kind of hit on, but like your ads cycle so fast, you can get the data in a day.
Yep.
But with sales, oftentimes, especially as you're starting the scale process, you can't get the data for a month. Sometimes it's even longer, and then you have to make a change and then observe for another month. So your cycle times are so much slower, it can drive you nuts. And that's like a big part of the sales thing. And then the other thing is that, what you mentioned, it's like, you can look at the data and then see what's there on marketing. You can do the same with sales. It's just super time intensive because you got to listen to the call. And then you also have to have the exact experience to know, okay, on the call, this is where it went off tracks, and here's how we're going to coach it. And here's how we're not going to overtrain this person, but we're going to give them just enough that they're going to keep progressing through this. And so like finding that balance of giving them just enough sales training, that's going to be the core deficiency. It's just a very time intensive process that when you're running a business, oftentimes you don't have the time to listen to all the calls and then figure that out.
Absolutely.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about, is the setters, the appointment setters, right? You have a team of 3, now almost 4 setters. You got someone in training. A lot of people don't even know that we do appointment setters and we introduce them.
Oh my gosh.
So I just wanted to ask you about the appointment setters, kind of like what you're seeing is working, what your experience has been with the appointment setters, and like how you're leveraging them.
Yeah, and that's been incredible. Honestly, just the value that you guys add in the appointment setters is just it's an insane degree of value, because it's not just bringing the advisors, it's bringing the appointment setters. And the other thing too is I've heard from like everybody else in the industry that it's like the most high turnover appointment setters, all high turnover, etc. And yes, there is some trialing at the beginning, but what's been insane and incredible is we've gotten some incredible people, these specialists, setters, right? We call them specialists in our business, but, setters is the more common term. are incredible. They're incredible people. They're awesome. They're great, valuable and awesome team members. And they're highly skilled, and they're coming in, from you guys, that we can get them on, and we can have them, come in and consistently get these sets, get these, people over the line. They're excited. They're eager. They're a big part of the team, and they're incredibly valuable. And we can show them, listen, like, you're a big part of the team because you're helping set these deals that our that our advisors are going to be able to close. You're triaging, but at the same time, we get in return these people that really care. Because I think the problem with a position like that is, if you don't have the right people, kind of like you guys, finding them, theoretically you could get like a random person, like newer to sales, but they're not going to be the person that's long-term, that actually cares about it, that's going to do a good job. You want somebody who really does care and can actually put in that effort. And that's what we found. So we've got, incredible, specialists on our team. We had started off with Korea, absolutely awesome. Brittany.
Love that guy.
Yeah. And more recently, Chris and Alberto. It's been great getting them on the team and really incorporating them in, because, they're calling a lot of people, but they're setting a bunch of appointments. We added phone number, phone call leads to the top of our webinar. And that's been working really well, calling every lead and getting those people, some trainings, warming them up, and then getting them on an advisor calendar.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing that you're experiencing is, like, as you've gone from, what are you spending in ads now that you're at like $450 a month? What's your typical monthly ad spend?
Yeah. So we're at like the 115, 120 kind of mark. Honestly, that's, there's a degree of like kind of the virus and some of the other stuff right now. So that's being completely like open and honest. But when you look at the scalability, we could, on that level, be hitting those 600K and, bringing in healthy profits and everything too. So I think the important thing is when I talk about like ROAS, it's the exact same thing, by the way, when you're talking about building up an advisor team, right? When you're on your own, you could be doing 40%, but then you're doing, or even 50%. If you're really sales oriented, you could be closing like 50%, right? But is that really how you want to scale up? Early on, running my ads, like, 12x, 10x ROAS for a long time. And it's the same thing when we get a lot of clients who come in here too. They're like 8x, 10x. When you want to scale to the hundreds of thousands, you're going to tap into colder markets, but you're going to have much higher revenue and profit at the end of the day when you calculate all of your everything. So I just say that too, because it's the exact same thing you're talking about, right? When you're scaling your team, when you're going into different things, that's really important. So, about 110, 120, part of that, is we do have some people that we're stacking, and then we'll do 450 off of that. And, the goal this month is to do 500, and we're on track. So it's going to be awesome.
So, point though that I definitely wanted to emphasize is, like, when you're at 115 grand a month, if you don't have an appointment setting team, like, think about just how much opportunity is falling through the cracks. Like, people that just didn't book, they forgot to book, something happened, and then they're able to take all that opportunity and make sure that they're talking with your advisors. It's like complete game changer at that level of ad spend.
Exactly. It really is. It really is. It's awesome. And you're also building that pipeline. So there is, obviously there's a lot of people, and we're hitting records, clients are hitting records, everybody's hitting, or not everybody, but there's a lot of people in our space who are hitting records right now, despite what's going on in the world with, the virus and everything. But there is a degree where there are people who are going to be pipelined for the future. These are more, if you cross over, because we had a lot of, we had a lot of like local, like roofers, solar businesses, different things like that maybe are not like coming in right now, that are going to be ready in the future. Now, the people that do come in, it's awesome. And we're able to get their ads running. And it's interesting. Like, we have solar people who are crushing it, even, cause you can't go door to door. So then you run your ad and you sell it. But there are some people with that objection. So what you're doing is you're still creating that pipeline and having your specialists handle it, because your advisors, if you look at it, right, as much as you want them to be following up with everybody, like if they're not following, it's one of those things where even if they haven't even had a call yet, which sometimes happens, how are they going to know to follow up with everybody? They have all of these leads coming in, all of these, phone calls every day, all day, every day. You need those specialists to be able to maneuver those relationships. And you really have a bank. Like each of our specialists has people that will eventually be a call and then, become a client, ideally, that they have pipelined for follow-ups themselves.
Love it. I definitely want to be mindful of time. We're a little bit over here. So if anybody wants to find you, wants to know more about getting YouTube ads, scaling with YouTube ads, where can they do that? And then how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I put together a page with a few gifts for you guys, just, for listening to these interviews, great primer for everything. If you go to adoutreach.com, ADOUTREACH, adoutreach.com/gifts. You'll actually see a little page. I'll just, kind of thank you for, being on the interview and listening and everything. But then underneath that, you can see that there's a link to our webinar, our YouTube ads webinar. Remember, I told you our average watch time is 53 minutes. Yes, that's the YouTube ads, but also we provide value and content on the webinar. You can't force people to stay that long without value. So we got a lot of value on the webinar. We have YouTube ads for high ticket training that's on there as well. And a link to our Facebook group, which you can, of course, also search directly. It's YouTube ads for entrepreneurs. We're posting trainings. It's kind of like your Facebook group that, we're streaming in now. We post trainings, we post all kinds of different things. Great way to interact with us. And when you guys are ready, feel free to book a call. Adoutreach.com/apply. It'll be on that page as well. And you'll be talking to somebody that Mike helped train or bring in. So it's awesome.
And then you'll be talking to us shortly after,
exactly.
because you'll have
you better be ready. It's a killer combo. There should be a combo. That's awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us, Aleric. It's been awesome. And then I think there's been a ton of stuff here for anybody that's looking to get this going. I'm just scanning the questions real fast. I would say, Eddie, I see your question. Jump back in. He actually hits that like in detail earlier. So I just say catch that on the replay. And that looks like that's it. So we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you would just comment whatever your big takeaway was in the comments below, if you've been with us throughout this. And then also, Aleric, I don't know if someone were to reach out to you guys through the comments, would you potentially reach out to them and just kind of chat them up if they had questions for you specifically?
Yeah. If you guys have questions, post it here. And it might not be me immediately getting back to you, but I'll make sure that myself or somebody from our team will get back to you. Sweet. And we can answer the questions and go from there.
Sweet. Yeah. So if you guys caught this replay and you got more questions, drop them below, and then we'll make sure that you guys get all your questions answered. That's it for this week's interview. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this interview, we do one like it every single week inside of our free Facebook group called 7-Figure Agency Owners and High Ticket Coaches. So if you're an agency owner, coach, service provider, and you're really wanting to scale to 7 figures and beyond, join us inside the group. It's coachingsales.com/group. Again, coachingsales.com/group. See you on the inside.